Hello, hello, hello. Welcome one, welcome all to the Shakespeare Show, or the Shakespeare Show, whichever one you'd prefer. So, I finally got a mic, an actual separate mic that I hope means that the sound quality will be better. I've been using this for years. But thankfully, I was able to finally get a new mic. So please let me know how the sound is, if people can hear me okay, all of that jazz. And hello, Omega Star on both platforms. So for today, what I wanted to sort of yay! Oh, wonderful. Okay, good. So what I wanted to discuss today was the history of the Mexican Revolution, because today, November 20th, is El Día de la Revolución, where we celebrate the today we celebrated the 114th anniversary of, hello Christina, welcome in, of the Mexican Revolution. And particularly I wanted to make sure that we had some time to actually go over it, because I feel that it's one of the periods of time that often aren't very discussed, especially not in the American context, especially because the stability, right, that the prior government had, right, in essence, was wanted by the United States. But anyway, I won't get into too much about all of that stuff, because I know that we've got to start our stuff now. But let me see here. So what we are going to watch first is, let me sound boost this, is the Armchair Historians history of the Mexican Revolution, which I'm sure will be great. Totally not biased at all. No, I'm joking, of course, but now I'm just trying to resize it to make sure everything all fits. Oh my, I don't even know how that happened. Sorry, I had... Apparently, getting a new microphone also resizes the windows that you use? I don't know. Okay, so welcome in. I appreciate each and every one of you that's here. I did want to let you know that if you would like to help me in some way, know that you can always like the stream. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I would like to get this channel to 500, so then that way, to 500 subscribers, so then that way I can finally get super chats and other such things. But also, if you'd like to help me in some way, I have two things on my Throne account. One called Help Shakespeare Survive, and the other one is for other reasons that I will get into at some later time. But actually, I think I go into it in the description. But again, I don't want to make this the center of today's show, but I just wanted to mention it. So wait, what? Quick, come you with some interesting properties of the number 114. Okay.
The year is 1876, and Mexico has been in chaos for over 50 years. After gaining...
I know that I'm already starting with my typical, I pause a lot. Yes, I know I do. It's part of the game. It's part of the game. And by game, I of course mean just how I operate, I guess. But 50 years is an interesting time because of the fact that, one thing I've always found very interesting is that Mexico has to claim 1821 as the beginning of its independence, right? But the United States, even though it was not recognized as an independent country until 1783 with the Treaty of Paris, it gets to claim 1776. Does that make sense? Mexico has to claim the day that Spain finally recognized us as independent. America celebrates the day that they declared themselves independent, right? Hello, Quack Quack. Welcome in. I've always found that a bit strange. For me, I just like to go with 1810. I know people can say, but if 1776 can be considered the independence date of the United States, then I think 1810 is a good a date as any for Mexico.
Its independence in 1821, the Mexican state had been embroiled in numerous wars against the Spanish, Americans, and French, and had seen a revolving door of leaders who often violently toppled their predecessors. This half-century of turmoil would leave Mexico in ruins, financially destitute, and missing over half of its territory. But by 1876, Mexico was ready to rebuild. With the ascension of Porfirio Diaz to the presidency in the fall of that year, Mexico would see its first stable ruler since independence.
So, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for Omega Star for contributing to my passport fund. Yeah. On this stream, I've actually brought up the mass deportations of Mexicans historically from the United States. And one thing I wanted to also make clear is that just as in the 20s and 30s, well, mainly in the 30s, and then later on in the 50s, which, by the way, Donald Trump actually said that he likes Operation Racial Slur. Now, I just won't say the slur, but I will say that even under Operation Racial Slur, against Mexicans, that is, over 1 million people, most of whom were U.S. born or U.S. citizens documented, were expelled from the United States. The prior time was in the 1930s, where around 2 million people were forcefully expelled. Hello, Moanoab. And yes, hello, Philippe. Hello, everyone. So, one thing I want to just... Oh, thank you so much, Christina. So, one thing I wanted to make sure that we kind of understand here as we're going on with this video is that Mexico could have been stable, right? Like this idea that, oh, it was always turmoil, and in many ways people still see it that way, is not actually because Mexico wanted to, be this way, right? Like the French who invaded Mexico in the 60s, in the 1860s, not the 1960s. Oh my God, that would be a whole different story. But they were the creditor, right? Like the story behind the whole invasion of Mexico and occupation of Mexico by the French was essentially out of Mexico saying that it couldn't pay its debts and it needed some time. And the United States and Britain said, fine. But the French, who had the lowest amount of money owed, said, this is how we're going to, this is literally like Operation Latin America. Yep, it's Porfiriato time. That's right. My kitten has the zoomies. Oh. So, yes, it's always good to have your passport. Also, by the way, know that you can just by filling out the form, you can choose to have the gender marker be as you so wish. So, just so you know, but also be cognizant of the fact that not every other country recognizes it. So it's I wish that there was a way so that way the passports would be recognized as such, but I know that, there's other stuff that comes with that. But yes.
Beginning an era that would reap much-needed rewards for the beleaguered nation, while also sowing the seeds...
No. Okay, sorry, no. Porfiriato. It did not help the beleaguered nations. It immiserated Mexico. Yes, everybody has a job. Everybody's doing great. Let's have a revolution. That's not how that works. No. Porfirio Diaz, right? El Porfiriato, which lasted until, again, 1910, from 1876 to 1910, was the longest period of stable rule, but the stability was used to imperialize Mexico. Like this is why there are, this was a time when there were a lot of immigrants to Mexico, particularly from places like Germany, right? Places from England, right? Like actually Cornish pasties in the state of Morelos and Hidalgo, particularly the state of Hidalgo, which is right there around Mexico City, sort of in the neighborhood of Mexico City. There were Cornish miners that were brought in to work. The railroads also tended to be owned either by American or British companies. Again, it was imperialized to within an inch of its life, right? So, I am a they. Oh, that's awesome. Isn't this guy like Curtis Yarvin's favorite guy? This guy right here? Yes, everyone, please, if you can, anything you can give, I sincerely appreciate it. I don't even know what to say, honestly. I just have not been feeling very good. But yes, Mexico industrialized in a very limited way. It made money for the comprador bourgeoisie, but again, it immiserated the vast majority of the population, which were mostly landless peasants. So,
of future conflict. Porfirio Diaz was a Mexican general who, in keeping with Mexican tradition, violently overthrew the US-backed liberal government that preceded.
oh god. Oh yeah, it's like something everybody does. Why would you want a US backed? Anyway, just already. Um, he Porfirio Diaz was also famously a hello BCat, welcome in, was also famously a war hero. Who fought on the side of who fought against, like, for example, the French, right, during the French intervention in Mexico, where Mexico briefly had a Habsburg emperor and, Belgian empress, who also adopted the kids of the first emperor. When Mexico first gained independence, it didn't go straight to a republic. It was like, what if we just like have our own empire? But no, it doesn't work. We need each other now more than ever. Oh, for real, honestly. But notice that when they say liberal and conservative, what the actual distinction that should be kept in mind is whether or not it was a gobierno centralista or un gobierno federalista. What does this mean, right? I mean, I think people can tell the federalist part, but it was, should Mexico be a unitary country, right, where all of its power resides within the capital, that being Mexico City, or should Mexico, not the United States, or should Mexico instead give power to its now 32 states? And this meant that conservatives tended to vie for a unitary government. Historically speaking, it's not exactly every single time. And in fact, it was the Mexican conservatives that wanted Maximilian I of von Habsburg to become the emperor of Mexico, right? The liberal faction under Benito Juarez, who was Mexico's first indigenous president. So, and in fact, I believe has been the only one that was indigenous so far. Everybody else was like, well, with the exception of Guerrero, who was our second or third president, because he was Afro-Mexican. But still, regardless, that's beyond the point. So Porfirio Diaz fought on the side of the liberals in that case, right? Because they wanted Mexico to be its own republic, to be free from French control, and also to have a new constitution, right?
Even though Diaz had taken the presidency through force of arms, he did legitimately win the subsequent election of 1877. Promising to put an end to despotic rule in Mexico, Diaz amended the Mexican Constitution soon after taking office to ban the re-election of presidents in the country. Seemingly keeping his promise, Diaz stepped down from the presidency in 1880. Mexico appeared to be taking its first steps toward legitimate democracy, but not everything was as it seemed. Manuel Gonzalez, the man who succeeded Diaz as president.
Okay, so it's related. I know what you're talking about. Jelly. La Guerra de los Pasteles was earlier. It was actually it preceded by Hello Nero Riot. Welcome in, welcome in. That is known as La Guerre de Pâtisserie, right? Or La Guerra de los Pasteles, the pastry war, essentially. Mexico has pastry wars, which actually, now thinking about it, sounds like a cooking channel show or food channel show. But in essence, what it was the first French intervention, right? And it lasted from 1838 to 1839. So it happened just after Texas, gained independence. So it's, definitely didn't help Mexico, the fact that that they had a first one. But the main thing was that the first intervention, the La Guerra de los Pasteles, only had the French take over the port of Veracruz, which is Mexico's Caribbean port. And I say this because it was, culturally speaking, it is connected to places like Havana, right? Because it was the major port of commerce and trade and cultural exchange between the interior of Mexico and everything to its east, right, all the way up to Europe. So because of that, there are, like, for example, like Afro-Mexican songs that originated in sort of slave songs, right? Because Mexico did have chattel slavery, and indeed, like as we've gone over before, Mexico and Peru received more slaves, African slaves, than the United States ever did. So the difference was that after slavery was abolished, but even before that, there already was a lot of intermarriage. So anyway, besides that, because there is a song that a lot of people know, and it's called La Bamba, right? And that song is actually derived from Afro-Mexican music, right? That's jarocho, right? Jarocho means that you're from Veracruz, right? So the jarocho music is deeply inflected with a lot of these African sounds, so to speak, in terms of like the type of music that is being created, right? Like the vocals, the ability to use what kinds of instruments, etc., etc. Because, like, for example, like the banjo, although usually associated with like people in Appalachia that are like white and like moonshiners, it's actually an instrument that developed from African slaves. So in that same vein, you have Veracruz also having that. But obviously at a very different scale. One, Mexico has very little land that was able to be used for plantations, which, and also the first free settlement of escaped slaves and therefore freed slaves was Yanga, which is also in Mexico itself. But again, just to note, right, that like there are so many things of Mexican cultural heritage that are often forgotten because they come from the third of the three cultures that Tlatelolco's Plaza is named after. Most people recognize the European culture and, to a lesser extent, the indigenous culture, but the third one is African culture. So that everybody, for the most part, numerically, etc., has some connection to the peoples that were brought to Mexico during the times of chattel slavery. Now, what the La Guerra de los Pasteles, or the Pastry War, was the takeover of Veracruz, and particularly the fort. There is a fort called Fortaleza San Juan de Ulloa. That fortress used to be like an island off of the coast of Veracruz. And in fact, the Spanish, when they lost, essentially, in Mexico, like on the mainland, they essentially stayed in that fortress and said, like, oh, but we still claim all of the land of Mexico, right? Like, we still claim all of this as ours, even though we're only on this little island, right? So, but over time, like now, if you were to go now to Veracruz, you will see that that fort is actually now part of the harbor, right? Like over time, right, there's been reclamation of land. And so now the fortress isn't like out in the water. It's now, sort of part of the harbor, right? So I hope that answers your question. Oh yes, thank you so much too for your correction, Jill. Yes, the banjo was originally from the Caribbean and was a development from the West African akonting. Okay, thank you so much for that. Pastry Wars Def sounds like a more aggressive version of the Great British Bake Off. Yeah, no, for real. The Pastry War, tune in looking for the Great Mexican Baking Challenge. But you get French warmongering. Yeah, the French, I don't know what it is. Like, I feel like all of us countries that have been colonized by the French in some way, or, as they like to call it, right, like, intervened in, we got to have solidarity with one another. We truly do.
Then turned out to be little more than a puppet for the former ruler, who would return to power himself in 1884, breaking his own ban against re-election.
So, yes. What was just said was real. Mexico has been against the idea of re-election, especially after we had one guy who served 11 terms as president, right? Under different constitutions, mind you, but still 11 terms. Mexico's kind of like, no, we really gotta, So that is why now, in the present moment, right, after the Constitution of 1917, which here is one of my copies of it, one of the major things that it says is that there is no re-election, right? And instead we have a 1 6-year term for each president. So that is why, as we go further into the video, you'll notice that you'll see signs that say no reelección, right? And re-electionism, right, or anti-re-electionism, right, was a foundational thing in the Mexican Revolution, right, to make it so that never again would you have, someone be president 11 times. Wow, he must have been really popular. No, he was not. He's the guy that lost Texas and then, 12 years later, lost half of the country. So no, he's not very popular. But he did call himself the Napoleon of the West. And I'm like, if by Napoleon of the West you mean you lose, then okay, well, we'll go with that, and of course, essentially he just went from Waterloo to Waterloo. Yeah, you lose repeatedly. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, literally, after Texas essentially had its slavers revolt, like, that's what it actually was. People that wanted slavery and were mad that Mexico did the very normal thing of literally ending slavery. They were like, yeah, Americans were like, yeah, you know what? Mexico doesn't know what it's doing. What it doesn't realize is that we need to, and yeah. And yes, that's right. Jelly is very much an expert. They are very much an expert in Afro-diasporic history. So, no re-election. And this time we literally were like, we're going to fight this time. Like, this time it's for real. But yeah, after you had the Santa Anna essentially be president 11 times, people were like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have, re-election. But again, he ended up breaking his own promise. So African culture, both in general and various people that had a big influence on music, food, and Turtle Island, for some reason. Yeah, I wonder why.
The media scandal that followed may have proved problematic for lesser politicians, but for Diaz, the solution.
Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe I should have said this earlier. You know, because I know people have problems with RuPaul. Trust me, I know. But RuPaul was right in that meme where it says, like, I better not see any fucking sombreros. Why is his avatar, like his little cartoon, wearing a sombrero, bro? Literally. I don't want to see any fucking sombreros, okay? I don't need that right now.
Was simple enough. He
On him, I should add, like on him, you know.
Threw the press in jail and legalized unlimited re-elections. In the end,
unlimited re-elections. Oh, I wonder what his plan was. But yes, if you'd like to help me in some way, you can always go to my throne. There, you know, you can help me in more ways than one. But
Porfirio Diaz would rule Mexico for over 30 years. While he stayed in power through unsavory means, Diaz's presidency was not uniformly bad for Mexico. Under his rule...
What? Bro, you gotta be... It was not uniform. Yeah, if you were white and rich. I mean, literally, that's... literally, like, the only people who benefited at all during Porfirio's were, like, the people that he was willing to... I mean, at one point, he literally had a policy that he said he wanted to whiten Mexican culture. I'm not even joking. Like this is the language that was used. And it was actually at a time that there was a faction of people called los afrancesados, right? The Frenchies, right? Literally. Or like the, you know, people that wanted to make Mexico kind of like what Buenos Aires is now, right? Where they kind of act like they're Parisians anyway. Like somehow they act like, yeah. Oh, trust me. Hello, Christina. So what ended up happening is during this time, again, like I said, a lot of imperialism, a lot. Most of the railroads were owned by Americans and British people. Most of like the ports were owned by French, etc., etc. So the working classes, yeah, you lived in Buenos Aires, like that's what they wanted. In fact, there actually are menus. There are menus of that time where you actually can see patas de rana. Literally, well, sometimes it would be in French, right? But literally frog legs. Like, I'm not even joking. Oh, thank you so much for shouting out Jelly Like Jam. Do make sure to follow them.
Mexico's oil, textile, and mining industries blossomed, and
look at that. And foreign investment flooded into the country. I wonder why the people inside the country couldn't, I don't know, develop those industries on their own. I wonder. Why is it that... Hello, Sarah. Right? It's always like, yes... It's a conundrum, right? It's always who would have guessed? So yes, imperialism, as I've said before, you know, that's why, like, after the revolution, Mexico's desire to nationalize its petroleum industry was a big deal. Like, to the point where, like, if it wasn't for World War II, at least some people say, some people would argue, right, that if it wasn't for World War II or the outbreak of World War II, Mexico wouldn't have been able to do it. Although that's kind of wrong, like time-wise, but you know.
Foreign investment poured into the country. Mexican industry was further aided by explosive growth of the railroad, which occurred under Diaz's supervision. This.
Okay, sorry, I'm just gonna keep pausing. You know what? It's not as though the regular person benefited from the railroads, because most of them were from extraction points to the coast, right? Or to Mexico City, or to one of the other ports, like the ports on the West Coast that we know were open to Asian markets and then on the East Coast, right, like Veracruz, Tampico. Which, by the way, there's like this drink, this like, honestly, it's very acidic. So if you have like, if drinking very acidic, very highly flavored juice is not your thing, Tampico is not the drink for you. But if you're willing to try it, there are different flavors. But like the original flavor of Tampico is, but Tampico is also a port in Mexico. And then the foreign investment started developing. Yeah, Tampico's like Sunny D, but thicker. Exactly, Jelly, exactly. That is such a good description. I feel it's often painted as first event A happened, and later foreign investors just happened to stumble in and say, hooray, yeah. Like, the indigenous people, like, up until this point, I mean, still, especially up until 1924, you still had, either by specific governors, but even by the federal government, particularly during Porfirio, or the Porfiriato, which is his reign, I suppose one could put it, there were still wars, quote unquote, against the indigenous people of Mexico, particularly the Yaqui and the Apache. Yeah. So, like, that's... Hello, the Ferret King. Welcome in. It's so nice to see you. Welcome in. Oh, I also forgot to show everybody. I finally got a Wiggler. Yay. I finally got a Wiggler. I'm so happy. Do you want Fanta? I mean, isn't it so cute? I love it. It's just, I don't know, it's so cute.
Extra economic activity allowed Diaz to pay off Mexico's external debt, which had plagued the nation since its founding.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wonderful. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was able to pay off its external debt. I wonder how that was even negotiated. It wasn't like, I don't know, like all of the railroads were just given away, essentially. Or the ports, or, the... Oh, that reminds you? I might be part Lipan Apache, so good to know. Funny, considering how I'm often labeled as Mexican. Right, and that's another thing, too, like, the Mexican border, right? Pardon me, not the Mexican border. The United States border wall, right, which only has existed since 1995. Oh, here we go, and you're right. Thank you so much for getting us started with a subscription. Thank you so very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. And also, I do like your new Free Palestine. And remember... Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Christina. So we are 4.5 minutes away from a possible hype train. If anybody were to, decide to give something else. So the way how the external debt was paid was by selling off as much of the country as possible. Which was, the United States essentially wanted to already colonize all of Mexico before. But instead they were okay with just imperializing it, right? But also you see like Ford building its factories in Mexico. You see, all of these different things, right? The idea that, there was this there were these halcyon days when the United States created everything it ever needed and blah, blah, blah. They never existed. In fact, this is kind of like one of those, since also, there is the discussion of mass deportations, right? And I've already spoken about that before, in the 30s and the 50s and the 70s, etc., against Mexicans, is the fact that when any of the crimes that were, and I won't get into detail, but the main reason why in the Rio Grande Valley, right, River Valley, which is sort of like the most southern part of Texas. In order to get as many plots of land for people, right? So around this time, there was no border control, right? Like you could go over to the United States or go over to Mexico. There was no, but because of that as well, the Texas Rangers, who have a horrible history, thinks I'm quite pleased with it, and I'm getting into visual arts. Ooh, yes. Used to work the radar approach control for Rio Grande Valley, McAllen, Harlingen, and Brownsville airports. Well, that's interesting. But we ran it from Corpus Christi. Oh, okay. I see. Corpus Christi. Okay. I've never been to Corpus Christi. I have been told that it's like, at least by people that told me about it, that like they go there regularly. They tell me it's nice. But I've just never been to there nor Galveston, but but anyway, what ends up happening is actually you enjoyed your years in Corpus. Oh, nice. That's good to hear. I'm glad that that you had a positive experience and everything. Oh my goodness. Yay, thank you so much, Ski Dilly Spooch. Oh my goodness, now we're gonna have a hype train. Okay, I guess. Woo! Ew, isn't it just... Okay, I have to get out our hype train song because, Let's see if I can find it, because if I can find it in time, because I keep losing it for some reason. Even though I have it as a playlist. I don't know why it's not... I don't know why. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Come on. Oh, there we go. Oh, good. I found it this time. Okay, hope everybody's ready. Okay, for this hype train. Okay, we're gonna... We got Ben Shapiro in the house, of course. Oh my goodness, thank you so much again, Christina, for the 100 bits. Ooh, is that a little narwhal? Oh no, it's a snowman. That is so cute. Okay, come on, Ben.
Now we're gonna do something we haven't done in a while. So over the last week or so, there's been a lot of attention paid to a music video. We're gonna get into in just 1 second. Yes.
Hi, full of Nicks.
Big
Dick.
Big old dick.
Narwhal snowman.
Three
big
balls. Look like we playing
in tennis. Big dick. I think his name Dennis.
I jerk his dick until that N-word finish. His dick big and green tastes just
it's like spinach. Dudes. I love when they send me all the nudes.
Had to make
that's how we're blue. He didn't have a clue.
He's sliding in.
Better. Stick of butter.
So the big dick swinging up in the motherfucking hallway.
Yes. We're all gay.
We like dick. I like his ass cause it's thick.
Thank you, yes.
So I shit and dick is dry, so therefore I spit on the tip. And it gets
significantly more vulgar.
Like
a lot more.
For
big guys, and they bust on my eyes.
They eat my ass just like apple
pie.
pie. If they keep fucking me like this,
Woo.
I might just die.
Until I die.
He licked my dick, and the cum start dripping. I took a bite of his ass.
It tastes like the blood and pepper chicken.
Throw me up in the air. My booty flipping. He dunked in his balls in my booty like he Scotty Pippen. Met the N-word last night. And I wrote his
dick like a bike.
He's so thick, he looks like a guy. But let's say hypothetically.
His name Mike.
Jordan. He fucked me
while recording.
He sent me
butt pics this morning.
Hands down, the greatest news
I received.
I love when I received his BBC. Three big balls. Look like we
playing tennis. I got a big dick. I think his name Dennis.
I jerked his dick until that N-word.
I'm glad you like it, Polonex. Must like spinach. Dudes. When they send me all the news. For the swells were blue. He didn't have a clue.
He's sliding in my ass like he's cleaning out gutters. Bigger than a stick of
butter.
So the big dick swinging
up in the motherfucking hallway.
Like me and my friends.
It's cause we're all gay.
We like dick. I like his ass cause dick, and he going to fuck my butt till I shit and dick is dry. So
therefore, I spit on the tip. Okay. So now that we've gotten that out of the way. No, I'm just joking. Let's see. Did we hit? Oh, we still have a little bit of time. Yes, thank you everyone so much for the hype train. I really appreciate it. I started using it. After I started streaming, my YouTube playlist library has been growing way too much. I haven't noticed how confusing. Yes, thank you so much, chat. Yes, we did need that. We needed something to lighten the mood up, for sure. For real, though. But now, ergo, I must spit on the tip. Indeed. That is the rules of Ben Shapiro. Because again, facts don't care about your feelings. But anyway. Oh, evil boy. Okay. Great Shabibo impression, thank you.
Diaz also oversaw the reconciliation of the Mexican state, church, and landowners whose distaste for each other...
Oh my gosh. He just said the worst part. Ah, yes, the state and the church back together again. No, that's not good, bro. They literally, like, this ended up causing a literal civil war called the Cristero War because of this. This is not good. And definitely not the landowners. Like, yeah, the landowners, oh yeah, got millions of acres, but it helped them overcome their differences. Oh, I bet it did with all of the peasants that they, suddenly got,
had led to conflicts in the past. Before we continue, a special thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Starch Entertainment Freeze. However, Diaz was making enemies, while his centralization...
Yeah, he already has one enemy, me, right here. He's already my enemy. Transtemporally, I'm his enemy.
Of Mexico brought some benefits. It also curtailed the power of individual Mexican states.
Bro, are you serious? Like, you're seriously gonna do your thing about the conquistadores? Like, what? You know what? Fine, whatever. It's fine.
Displeasing many local elites.
I mean, they're local elites, all right, but I don't know what's happening with her hat. I never seen a hat like that before. It's like, I don't know how it's like that big. Like, who even has? Oh, you can barely see it. Oh, no, I gotta show y'all this hat. Like, look at this hat. Look at this hat. It's bigger than her whole body. Like, my goodness. I know, it's just very strange. Very strange. But, I mean, she got a big old hat. That's all I know. And you know what? She's the evil one in the telenovelas. You already know which one I'm talking about. You know. You know if you know. Hi. Hello, piffle cakes.
From the perspective of everyday people, Diaz's reign also had issues, as it saw the massive expansion...
No way. You mean empowering the capitalists? The reactionary church? And centralizing the state apparatus led to problems? But you said foreign investment was at an all-time high. So that means there's a problem with your previous thesis about the foreign investment. I don't know, just saying. I don't know anything over here, but you know what? All I gotta say is, as long as my grandfather's recognized for inventing spaghetti and, linguine and rigatoni, all of that stuff, and bringing electricity for the first time to Mexico, only then can I even begin to recognize that there were problems at the turn of the century in Mexico. So,
of haciendas, large rural estates that pushed Mexican peasants off their land and compelled them to work as unskilled laborers.
Oh no. Wait. It's not the foreign investment's fault that all their investments were highly problematic, don't you know, right? Yeah, so yes, the enclosure of land and the removal of land held in common, which by the way also happened in Texas against Mexicans, because Mexicans have had a tradition of working land in common. And America was like, we can't have that. We literally cannot have people thinking that they can care about each other, and so when barbed wire was invented, right, there was a saying, que cuando llegó el alambre, entonces llegó el hambre, right? So, essentially saying when the wire, right, the wire came, right, razor wire, then came hunger. And that's because they literally started parceling up the land in South Texas, but also this was also happening in Mexico. But in Texas, it was particularly, it was done to ethnically cleanse. I think that I actually feel comfortable using that term. I mean, not because of the term itself, but because of what the United States did, right? To ethnically cleanse as much of South Texas, to literally sell it off to mainly southern white farmers that wanted new land. So you see over time, like in the late 19th century, like essentially like the 1890s, most land plots are quite large. But you see essentially a tripling of the population of Anglo settlers. And you see an increasing amount of dispossessed Mexicans who are now forced to be unskilled laborers. So this is why I was trying to mention this earlier, but like, even when there were, crimes committed against, literally murdering Mexicans in South Texas, it wasn't seen as a problem, insofar as it was only seen as a problem that might harm commerce, right? They were like, oh, if it gets out that, these white people are over here, like, well, all sorts of people, sure, fine. The Germans, the whatever, yada, yada, yada. All of them, right? All of them, that they were committing crimes and literally, like, murdering people, literally for anything. Like, there is a case of, I remember his surname is Garcia, but essentially they covered the whole thing up. Like, essentially, there was no way for them to, even though the police had asked the local precinct if they could put Mr. Garcia in their prison, because I kid you not, they were going to handcuff him to a tree. Not even joking. But because the Texas Rangers got a little tired, after riding around, all day, right? Even though they put him in that jail, they still found a way to make it so that not only was the fact that he was they lied to the point where they said that they saw him in Mexico, that they saw him across the border. I'm like, what? You got some binoculars and you're looking out for, like, right? And so even though everybody was like, no, he's not there, because you can go ask, they were willing to cover it up. And, unfortunately, really we only have the historical record. Like, they were never prosecuted. Nobody was ever prosecuted vis-a-vis that particular incident. But the way how they saw it was, the way how the people at the time saw it was not as it's a bad thing for the people, right, for Mexicans. They saw it as, oh, otherwise Mexicans will choose to go to California or to the South to go work instead. That was their problem. Like, oh, no, we need the workers here, not for them to be afraid and go over there, right? So, yeah. So this mirrors what's also happening, or at least is analogous to what's happening in Mexico itself, right? All of these large haciendas, kind of in a different way though, all these large haciendas that are being built over land that used to be held in common means that the population of Mexico starts to become heavily urbanized, right? But at a rate that's too fast for cities to adjust. So you get, very typical issues that many cities get at this time in history.
Additionally, even though the foreign investment that Diaz attracted helped Mexico grow economically, it also meant that very little of Mexico's...
Hold up. Okay, he actually said it. Little of Mexican industry was actually owned by Mexicans. Hardly anything was owned by Mexicans, so especially, the average person. Like, if you had to work for a living, it was not fun. It never was fun. But I'm glad that he at least recognizes this. But I find it weird, like, why... I get that he's trying to make foreign investment be gold, right? Like, he made it be, like, a shiny gold thing. But this is, like, I don't know why, but it being, like, a yellow liquid being dropped into the thing, I don't know.
Industry was actually owned by Mexicans. One by one, as these tensions mounted, Mexico inched ever closer to a breaking point.
But bro, just a second, you were like, their industry blossomed. What do you mean? Are you telling me that the job creators don't actually care about the workers? And that, centralizing power in the state and capital going into fewer and fewer hands and, all of that stuff. Are you telling me that that's a bad idea? Because a couple minutes ago, you said it was cool. You said it was okay, right? So...
That breaking point finally came in 1910, after Diaz, who had previously announced that he would be stepping down from the presidency, promptly changed his mind and jailed the leader of the opposition, Francisco Madero. Unfortunately for Diaz, Madero...
Also, I just find it kind of funny. Like, yes, Madero was the first figure, we can say, right, that represented the Mexican Revolution, but... in essence, the Maderistas, as they existed then, right, one of their main things was, again, anti-re-electionism and also wanting to draft a new constitution, right? Because this constitution right here is the one from 1917. So this would not be promulgated until, well into the revolution and before it technically ended, right? But it wasn't done... until Venustiano Carranza. And what was interesting, too, is when they were promulgating the Constitution, there was a question of whether they should move the capital away from Mexico City. And it's interesting because then that would have made Mexico the country, Mexico the state, and Mexico City the city be three non-capital entities, right? Like, but then they wrote in the Constitution, you know what? You know what the solution is? Wherever the capital is, it doesn't matter where in the country, it will be called Mexico City. So that's how it solved that problem.
A wealthy landowner and son of a governor, managed to escape to the United States. Temporarily out of Diaz's reach, Madero called for the Mexican people to rise up on November 20th, 1910, the day...
Exactly, and that's why today it is perfectly okay to say, keeping within our historical traditions, Viva la Revolución, right? The Mexican Revolution was the first social revolution of the 20th century, and yet it is never recognized as such. It is this revolution, starting in 1910, that actually created the second communist party, from the revolutions, right? The second communist party out, the first one essentially outside of Russia. Started by an Indian Marxist. So based, move the capital and rename. So Jelly, I think you'll like this. Then the official name now for Mexico City is Mexico City Tenochtitlan. So technically speaking, if they were to move it, it would literally just become Tenochtitlan, which I prefer. I would prefer it being Tenochtitlan. But that's just me. But they were gonna move it to Querétaro, which is where the Constitution was promulgated, because during the Revolution they didn't have access to Mexico City yet. Yeah. They finally they changed it, to recognize the fact that it is Tenochtitlan, and the indigenous name. Yep, it's the name in Nahuatl, Tenochtitlan. Which, just as a general thing, I don't know why this came to my mind, but anytime you read anything in Nahuatl, right? Anytime you see Tlan, that means the city of. Like it's kind of like Burg in German, right? Like similar, Burg. It's very similar to that. It's not exactly that, but usually it means the place of or the city of. Hello, Jazz Guitar Jeff. Welcome in. I'm glad that you're learning. I hope that that's good. I would presume so. But welcome in.
The Mexican Revolution had begun. In the north of the country, Madero joined forces with Pancho Villa, a former bandit and horse thief, and began...
This is where I really dislike how they decide to portray Pancho Villa. Again, trust me, I am very critical of all of the stuff that's ongoing right here, but of Mexican history. Trust me. But I always hate how they always want to label him as a bandit. Again, not saying that he did not do, some of the things that he's accused of doing, but at this time in the United States especially, just like how there are other epithets like terrorist, for example, right, that are used kind of willy-nilly, by the United States to just mean like anybody that isn't, this was actually a common thing held against Mexicans. They were all, like, particularly Mexican men were generally, in a racist way, seen as bandits in themselves, right? So, like, calling him a bandit and saying that he did this stuff, like, there is evidence that there were some things that he got up to, but the United States deciding to recognize him or deciding to denominate him as a bandit comes at the same time that any person, and I'm speaking particularly using Texas as the example, was considered, when they would, and Jelly, I know we've discussed this before, right, when they match the description, right, which is like a Mexican man, right, literally, like that was pretty much what they would always say, that would immediately come with the idea that they were bandits, that they were thieves. And that was, again, the term used at the time to justify the incarceration and the deportation or even murder of said people. So that's why I just wanted to be clear now that always be very wary of whenever the United States, one, documents such a person in history, but two, also what they decide to call them, right? Like, oh, what are they, right? Because it's often, used as a, yeah. So let me actually put this a bit more into perspective as well. The city of El Paso, right? El Paso del Norte, that's its full name. And the city across it, Ciudad Juarez, right, it's actually a very interesting place because it it is actually where the last border dispute between Mexico and the United States happened, which was in the 70s, for the area known as, I think it's is it Chapalita? I don't remember. I don't remember the name right now. But essentially, El Paso became a city where a lot of people who were sort of escaping the government in Mexico, right, who were, seeking asylum, or during the French intervention, right, and the Second Empire, as they like to call it, where Benito Juarez is known to have gone to, right, that he knew that, I mean, that's why it's Ciudad Juarez, right, because Benito Juarez went to, so it became very popular as a place. When I say popular, I just mean that it became an important place where a lot of important people in Mexican history would end up going, right? Because of the fact that it was on the U.S. side of the border, so away from the power of the federal government in Mexico, but right on the border as well, so that should the winds change, right, in either direction, they could easily re-enter back. So this is why, like, the relationship that Texas has with its border is, and actually all of the border states have with their border with Mexico, are ones which, again, do have a history. In fact, there's actually a book called Bad Mexicans, which, regardless of the title, talks about all of the revolutionaries, including anarchists, very famous anarchist, Flores Magón. Actually, there were brothers. There were two Flores Magón brothers who fled Mexico during the revolution and went to the United States, right, to seek refuge. And yes, please make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe. Yeah, tool of propaganda, dehumanizing terms. Exactly. Please make sure to also subscribe if you're on YouTube. Make sure to leave a like. And yes, if you'd like to be without having to worry about ads on Twitch, you can always do so by either using your free subscription using Amazon Prime, or by paying $6 to get an entire month ad-free. So,
fighting against federal troops. In the South, peasant revolutionary Emiliano Zapata began his own rebellion inspired by Madero's promises of land redistribution.
So, okay, this is actually, I'm actually glad that this is mentioned. One of the central things, and I've said this many times before, right? This is not the first time I've said this, nor will it be the last. Land redistribution is one of the central things that any revolution has to be trying to do. Because, one, not only, for example, must the indigenous people be given, right, and recognized for their, for the fact that they safeguard the land, right, but also, right, the workers should not be subjected to, right, being peon in una hacienda, right? Being a peasant is not fun, but my point being that land expropriation is very important for any revolution, because who gets to own the land is always a question that, for every revolution, depending on how revolutionary, quote unquote, you want it to be, is either at the forefront, right, or is pushed, or is put on the back burner. A lot of times it is put on the back burner. I'm not saying it's every time, just saying that some of the times it has been, right. And what I mean by this is all of the wars before, like, the wars of independence, did not consider redistributing land, right? It did take away land from the former peninsulares, that is the Spaniards from Spain, but it still allowed the criollos to then replace them, right? So, in terms of land ownership. So,
this increasingly hostile environment, federal forces faced numerous defeats at the hands of Madero, Villa, and Zapata, motivating Diaz to step down to prevent further bloodshed, exiling himself to France in May of 1911.
So, when I was the last time I was in Paris, which I'm acting as though I go all the time. When I was in Paris and I went to finally go visit, I actually had the chance of visiting. Well, I knew that his grave was there, right? I knew it was there, but I wasn't looking for it, if that makes sense, right? I actually was looking for someone else's grave. But anyway, point being that I found it, and it's like green, and it has like, you know, the eagle, right? The eagle and snake insignia, right? And I noticed something very interesting. One, its doors were closed. Like you couldn't go in there. Another one's you can go in because some of them are like mausoleums, right? Two, nobody wanted to go in there. And three, ain't nobody leaving no flowers at that grave. Nobody. And I sure as hell wasn't. So yeah. Like literally just sold the country to the highest bidder, if even that, and also moved and lived in luxury in Paris until the end of his life. And yeah.
Soon after Diaz's departure, Madero was elected president of Mexico. After less than a year of fighting, the age of Porfirio Diaz had been brought to an end. This bright new age of Mexican history ran into problems almost immediately. While Madero and much of the middle class wanted electoral and economic reforms, they did not want extreme revolution. However...
Oh, well, see? That's your problem right there. You kind of need a little bit of revolution. I don't know, like, this is always a thing, right? Reform or revolution. The middle class, essentially, the petit bourgeoisie, I don't like saying middle class because it's, I don't know. In the United States, middle class is supposed to mean a particular thing, but it's kind of hard to, like, you know, really define it. But the petit bourgeoisie essentially wanted a chance for the larger capitalist firms and, you know, landholders to reduce in size, so then that way they could participate in, you know, the capitalism, quote unquote, right? They didn't want a revolution, or rather, they did the petit bourgeoisie did not want a revolution that would have given more power and more economic rights and land ownership to everybody else, right? So that is why, even though the first part of the revolution is the Maderistas, right? They wanted social reforms, but contained, right? Zapata in particular, one of his main things was land redistribution. That is why, for example, he still remains an important figure even to this day, both in regards to the Zapatistas, right? But also even in other leftist spaces in Mexico and also elsewhere, precisely because of the fact, like, for example, I don't know, I talked about it a little bit the other day, but Ayotzinapa, right? The normal school from whence 43 normalistas, or Ayotzinopos, as they're also called, were disappeared by the collusion of four levels of you know, the municipal police, the state police, the federal police, and the army, you know, the armed forces in Mexico. They all, and the government, all worked to disappear these 43 students. And it has been 10 years since it happened on the night of September 26th to 27th. And to this day, we have not one idea, like not even the slightest hint of where they could be. And only, the only person that really even got, like, you know, got prosecuted was the Attorney General, right? But his, like, the head of CISEN, sorry, I know I'm going off on a little tangent. You know where he's hiding out? You know where he decided to seek refuge from justice? The state of Israel, of all places. Who would have known, right? So, I don't know, just interesting.
Madero's hope for a limited revolution had become increasingly untenable as decades of simmering discontent boiled over, and the revolution began to slip out of his control.
See, I really dislike this because it's making it seem like Madero was like America likes to do this, okay? And I've mentioned it before to other people, but like you even see it where like the United States kind of will almost seem, or sometimes will talk about Trotsky as though he were good. I mean, not good, but like good in relation to Stalin, right? Again, this is not to discuss, but they will often depict him as like, especially like if you have like Animal Farm, right? Where Trotsky is kind of like thrown out of the farm, right? And so then, you have but it's always been fascinating to me how the United States likes to do this, right? Where it will sort of say, well, the revolution would have, or whatever would have been okay if they would have just stayed to this, right? Another thing that this also happens with is the Second World War with the Germans, where it's like, had they, what they did was horrible. However, blah, 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 right? Like, if they had only done this, it would have been different, right? They hadn't done... Didn't Trotsky do a lot of the bad Stalin shit? There's actually a very famous description of him wearing like all leather, right? Like, and him writing literary criticism, right? As he's driving around in his like steel vehicle, right? Around Ukraine while he was doing some of the, yeah. So, there's that.
In his call for revolution in 1910, Madero had...
And also, by the way, it should be noted that this right here in 1910, 1911, the call was for tierra y libertad, for land and liberty, right? Which would later pop up, for example, in the Russian Revolution, right? The October Revolution, as land, peace, and bread. So you can see why at this time in particular, but also just after the revolution, I kid you not, there is a New York Times headline, and you can go look for it, please do, where the way how they describe Mexico is Bolshevik Mexico, which I'm only like, I wish. Leather Daddy Trotskyists. I mean,
promised land redistribution to the poor, but with armed farmers now roaming much of the Mexican countryside, Madero demanded that the peasants disarm before any land distribution went forward.
Oh my gosh, I've never seen this video. I have never seen it play out like literally like a video game. Like it's literally like Pokemon. A wild Emiliano Zapata appears. Like, bro, you got... First of all, I don't know how I feel about someone being described as wild, just because they're Mexican, but, maybe that's just me being overly sensitive, but I don't know. It doesn't seem right to me. Like, see, if you see here, right, a wild Emiliano Zapata appears. Like, it's literally like Pokemon, like, bro, like, it's not like Pokemon. But yeah, like I like how like their issue is like, oh, los campesinos, right? The farmers and the farm laborers, they are with weapons, right? And that's what's bad. No, that's not what's bad. Why are they this? Why is it that they want the promise of land redistribution to be at the center of what they get? Because they hardly got any benefit from most of the reforms in the beginning. So
this perceived betrayal was taken especially poorly by Emiliano Zapata, who rose up against Madero in 1912. In response, Madero would send one of his generals, Victoriano Huerta, to put down Zapata's rebellion.
Bro, okay, look. I gotta be real with you right now. Saying that Huerta burned a Zapatista village, that's not right. That's not right. Like, I don't know, something about that wording, that phrasing is just not like it's like, oh well, he represents the state and he's going against this, rebellious, person that wanted of all things for the people that worked the land to be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor. But I don't know, there's just something about this last part especially that's just kind of like, this state violence has not ended vis-a-vis the Zapatistas. It still continues. In fact, there are marches that happen even the last time I was in Mexico City, calling for an end to the violence, because the Zapatistas have essentially not had a reprieve from state violence since 94.
Which would prove easier said than done. By early 1913, with battles still raging against Zapata in the south and the chaos of the revolution still uncontained, support for Madero began to falter. The United States began to worry that the instability in Mexico would be...
Oh, no. Oh, the United States began to worry. Okay, yeah, that was its... it was concerned. Yeah, that's totally the reason why. It was like, oh, this... America is worried about its sister nation, right? Yeah, that's totally the reason why. Also, I don't mean to be pedantic, but in this case, I will. Hello. Oh no, you know what? Never mind. Hello, Mordant Inky Cap. Welcome. Concerned U.S. Right? I'm just like, okay, fine, whatever. Like, that's not true. The United States wanted to colonize the entire country back in the 1840s. I don't see why they would be concerned about it now, right? Especially if it didn't benefit them in some way. I mean, I don't know, but it'll get into why. But also, Baja California Sur didn't exist yet. Just putting that out there, because he has all of the present day states, but Baja California was just one state at the time.
For their business interests in the country, and began to wonder if...
Oh, their business interests, so that's why they were concerned. So let me guess. America tried to help redistribute the land with the peasants? Because that would be the correct thing to do. But I highly doubt that's what America did.
Interest would be better served if someone else was in charge. Someone like Victoriano Huerta. As it turns out, Huerta didn't need much convincing.
I mean, imagine someone like the United States comes to you and it's like, we're literally one of the most powerful countries on the planet, and we want you to essentially, run our client state, and you can do pretty much whatever you want. After he just attacked the Zapatista, the Zapatista rebellion, right? Like, of course he didn't need convincing. I mean, he was already given free reign to do whatever he wanted, militarily speaking, right? Extrajudicially speaking. So what difference would it make, But this is where the Mexican Revolution, right? Although I would say even from the beginning, right, the concern of the United States for its business interests, which has always come first when it comes, like the United States does not care about Mexico's people, right? It doesn't. But its business interests, right, its capital that it has because of imperialism, etc., is very important to it. So this is when you start to get the, so this is now when you begin to get much more U.S. intervention. They already tried to take over the whole country. Now they're going to not try to take over the whole country, but also still have a say in everything.
In an agreement signed at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City, the United States and Huerta agreed that Madero would be deposed in a coup, which ended up leading to the death of...
Look, you know what I mean? It's like, I like how I like how the way how this is constructed is like because the United States, right, at the United States Embassy, because they signed like an agreement, right, which is one of the reasons why we know, right, what were the stipulations of everything, that somehow that makes it like okay. Some people do think that like it was okay for them to sign, and yet at the same time, like in 1917, right, you get the bullshit about the Zimmerman telegram. Like, Mexico was never going to invade was never going to invade the United States. That's just, it was literally going through a revolution at the time. So like, yeah, it's just
Mexico's first revolutionary.
I wouldn't call him the first revolutionary. I mean, I feel like there were others before him. I don't know, like Morelos, Guerrero. I feel like they're also revolutionaries, but
Madero was gone, and Huerta now assumed the Mexican presidency, all according to plan. What was not according to plan was Huerta's alcoholism and poor administrative skills.
oh, here we go. Here we go. Oh, the problem is that he couldn't make the trains run on time. The expediency of America's imperialism should not be the concern of anybody. But, I don't know.
This unfortunate combination of traits led to...
Oh, don't say traits. Don't say traits. That's just... No, that's just... Now you're essentializing him. Like, as if though this were part of his essence of being, quote unquote. Right? Like, everybody... One, okay, the fact that he drank, fine, whatever. That's really whatever. I don't really, but like the poor administrative... Oh, Americans love to talk about literally everybody else in the global South in this way. Those traits. Oh God, it's just.
to vocal opposition to his rule almost immediately. Chief among these critics was Venustiano Carranza, the governor of the state of Coahuila.
By the way, like an inordinate amount of Mexican presidents have come from just this one state. And it's not even like in the central part of the country, right? So this is where most of the people live in Mexico, right? In the central part, the colonial heartland. Coahuila's way up here. Right, it's one of the states that borders Mexico. Its main border crossing city is called Piedras Negras, right? But again, like I said, for some reason, just an inordinate amount of Mexican presidents have come from just that one state, which is interesting because it was part of, like, back when Texas was still part of Mexico. Texas was part of Coahuila. It was called El Estado de Coahuila y Texas. Yes, I hope everything works out. Getting your passports.
On March 26, 1913, Carranza went from critic to rebel when he called for the removal of Huerta and launched an armed uprising from his base in the north of the country. In this endeavor, Carranza...
Look... Oh, no, wait, now you guys are like Yu-Gi-Oh? Bro, can you not? Okay, look, I get it that there are different ways to teach history, but obviously there is this is not like academic history, right? This is a collection of factoids being, blah, blah, blah. But even so, like, first, you have a war crime being played out as if though it were a Pokemon game. 1. 2, now it's Yu-Gi-Oh? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to know what trap card is going to get activated. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, this is just...
Carranza was joined by Pancho Villa, who had spent the previous years amassing a sizable force, and newcomer Alvaro Obregón, who was appointed by Carranza to lead his army in the north.
So, one thing that's interesting is that people have said that Alvaro Obregón, right, was actually Mexico's first Irish president, because it is said that whether or not it doesn't really matter to me, but that his surname is Hispanization of the name O'Brien, right? So it became Obregón as a way to, say O'Brien, but in Spanish. So Alvaro Obregón. And another state that a lot of people have come from. In fact, at one point before the Gadsden Purchase, which is this area called La Mesilla, right, which extends from El Paso, well, not including El Paso, but like southern New Mexico and Arizona, right, all the way up to Yuma. In fact, there's actually a town named Gadsden in Arizona, as far as I can remember, or it might be in Cal. No, it would have to be in either one of those two states. Anyway, point being that, which was before 1853, right? There was a city in southern Arizona where, I think Arizona, maybe it was New Mexico. Well, it doesn't matter. The point being that that city, which was essentially as far flung as you can get, right? It almost had someone who won the presidency, which would have been weird if that part of the country would have been sold away, right, whilst president. But I doubt that. But hello, MIDI doctors.
With the addition of Zapata's peasant army in the south, this new revolutionary alliance,
like, it's so strange to Zapata, I would totally, I would totally want to make sure that people are clear that he keeps calling it his peasant army. It was, but the way how he's saying it is just like, I don't know. It's like, how do you, how you say it also. Again, Zapata was the person for whom land redistribution was the most important thing, right? Again, and this is why people who tended to be campesinos, right, also tend to be more indigenous, also Afro-Mexican or Afro-Mestizo, right? So the people who under colonial society were not able to own, the land that they worked on, etc., right, and were relegated to some of the lowest jobs possible, right, is who Emiliano Zapata is representing, right? This is why this is why the Zapatistas, for example, although they are not an explicitly indigenist movement, right, but definitely one which is connected with indigeneity, right? This is why they use Zapata as a kind of as their sort of most important revolutionary, right?
alliance sought to surround Huerta and forcibly remove him from power. In more bad news for Huerta, the United States, despite backing his original coup less than a year prior, switched sides and threw in their lot with Carranza's alliance.
Oh my gosh. Oh, the United States just loves getting into you don't even go here. You don't even go here. Okay? Go home. But let's see this. Since 1914, Germany had supported... Oh, no. This is dumb. Zimmerman telegram stuff again. Germany had supported Huerta's government through funding and attempted arms smuggling, hoping to incite war. That was never going to happen. That was never going to happen. I mean, literally, it was U.S. backed. You know what I mean? It's like if you just think if you just think about it, both Carranza and Huerta were U.S. backed. It's just that they flipped sides, a year later. That's it. That's the end of the story right there. There was never going to be any Mexican invasion of anywhere, because there's still a revolution going on.
Huerta was slowly being backed into a corner, but he wasn't defeated yet, and fierce fighting continued into 1914. Huerta's situation soon grew untenable, however, as American troops occupied the port of Veracruz.
I wonder why the Americans felt like they needed to take control of the port of Veracruz. I wonder why. Very simply put, it's because they wanted to choose who became the president of Mexico. Again, after choosing all the people that that were supposed to be president, they wanted their guy to win, right? Which had switched from Huerta to Carranza. So the United States essentially occupied Veracruz, which again is literally, I mean, like, the United States and its need to like meddle in literally everybody's shit. It's just, I mean, the main thing being that because they were able to close off the main port from Mexico that goes to Europe, right? In terms of, and also the United States, in terms of like arms, etc. I mean, even just like food, whatever it might be, but other things. That essentially meant that whomever the United States allowed to get access to, right, materials, right, such as, you know, food for the soldiers or whatever, arms, etc., was going to win, right? This is them putting their whole ass on the scale. That's pretty much what America always does.
Following a diplomatic dispute, and Carranza, Villa, Obregón, and Zapata closed in on Mexico City. Under this immense pressure, Huerta would resign on June 15, 1914, and flee into exile, ironically, into the United States.
How? That's not ironic at all. That's like par for the course. Like, of course he's gonna go. Otherwise, why are they here? Why are they here? The only thing is they want this dude to win. But he was still an accomplice. He's still part of the comprador bourgeoisie. Like, he still helped them have this power. Like, I don't understand why, like, when it comes to this part of the revolution, right, in 1914, somehow some people will sometimes think like, oh, but they wanted Carranza to win. Yeah, but they also wanted Huerta to be, you know what I mean? Like, their collaborators are always welcome in the United States.
With Huerta gone, the revolutionary leaders now had to decide how they would rule Mexico. Carranza, as the instigator of the rebellion, took the risk of declaring himself president-elect, but in order to reduce tensions, also called for a meeting where Villa, Obregón, Zapata, and him could all discuss their differences. However,
I mean, even he says it, but it's just like, come on. Like, yes, the U.S.-backed ruler of Mexico during the revolution. Yes, they're just gonna have like a little tea party, you know, like eat some scones, you know, with some clotted cream and some Earl Grey. Like, one of them has the backing of the United States, which was blockading Veracruz. Like, I don't know. Of course it was doomed to failure, because the last thing America wants is for people to be treated equitably in the global south.
This meeting was destined to fail. Villa and Zapata, who came from poorer backgrounds than Carranza.
This is another thing, right? They're from poorer backgrounds, bro. Why do you think you were calling Zapata's army the peasant army earlier? Of course, like, Obregón and Carranza were from bourgeois families, so it wasn't as big of a change if they were put in charge of Mexico. It would have if Villa and Zapata would have been, because again, primarily Zapata was there fighting for the rights of the indigenous people, right, the marginalized, to a degree, right, that put forward land redistribution as one of the most important things. Again, I know I'm, repeating a little bit, but it's the reason why they want anybody but Zapata and Villa to ever get any say, right, is because they don't want them to redistribute land that would otherwise belong to capitalists, right, to U.S. capital.
Carranza and Obregón wanted immediate social programs and agrarian reforms to placate their largely peasant following.
Also, by the way, I should note that he says largely peasant following. Of course, they're going to support the revolution. The vast majority of Mexicans at this time are peasants. So literally, you're talking about people that are at the very tippy top of the, socioeconomic pyramid, one might say. They're the ones that are like, yeah, we know that you guys want some reforms, but how about no? And yeah.
On the other hand, Carranza and Obregón favored more long-term political reforms. These differences proved impossible to reconcile.
They're not impossible to reconcile. Like, oh, we want something that's long, like, for example, no re-elections. Okay, fine. That can also happen at the same time as land expropriation, right, and redistribution to the people that work the land itself. Viewing them as oppositional, right, as if they didn't have any other reason why they would be in opposition to one another, it makes no sense. Because it wasn't an alliance of the four men. I mean, if anything, again, knowing that the United States put its whole ass on the scale, right, to tip it over in its favor, it already had, their men in Mexico City, right? Carranza, so...
And the alliance between the four men shattered, with Villa and Zapata launching yet another insurrection with the aim of toppling Carranza and his ally Obregón. Rapid advances by Villa and Zapata's rebelling forces pressed Carranza and Obregón to abandon Mexico City and flee to Veracruz, which by this point had been vacated by the Americans.
So think about what this means, though, right? The revolutionary forces of the Ejército del Norte and el Ejército del Sur, right? Of the two, like the northern revolutionaries and the southern ones, right? They were able to take over the capital of Mexico, right? Mexico City, right? And yet, when it comes to the fact that that meant that the previous, right, rulers of Mexico, or at least hitherto, right, erstwhile leaders, went to Veracruz, right? And of course, like he states, the armchair historian states, well, it had already been vacated by the Americans. Corpus Christi, as well as other ports, even in Texas, as well as even ships that went to Havana, which at that point was still part of, which at this point was actually like essentially under U.S. Was under U.S. control for the most part, anyway, as far as I can remember. Means that like they did go there with the idea that they could just go into exile and not have to deal with the repercussions of literally not listening to the people.
By December 1st of 1914, Zapata and Villa had entered Mexico City, but neither of them felt qualified to govern the country, and they wasted precious time deciding on a course of action, which allowed Carranza and Obregón to regroup and take back the capital.
I do think characterizing it, the fact that like they didn't feel, they didn't think that they would be able to run the country, also stems from the fact that, again, Carranza and Obregón still had U.S. backing, right? Like if you look at it, it's just these four dudes, right, that are mad at each other, and the fact that they prevaricated because of the fact that they didn't know who to put in charge, right? They essentially didn't have someone that they felt could run the country, because again, they wanted social reforms that would have taken place instantly, and also long-term ones. I don't know why the armchair historian is acting like there weren't any, but there were. Like workers' rights, stuff like that, like more and more and more stuff like that, right? Suffrage, etc., right? But again, you have the fact that in Veracruz, they still have access to the U.S. market as well. So even though the Marines are no longer in Veracruz, it doesn't mean, however, that they can't help Carranza and Obregón, right?
The following months would be characterized by brutal fighting in the center of the country, although neither side managed to achieve a significant breakthrough. This would change during the second half of 1915. In the south, Carranza sent forces to combat Zapata's peasant bands and slowly began pushing Zapata back to his home state of Morelos.
So this state here, Morelos, right, is named after one of the insurgentes, right? One of the insurgents of the independence wars, as they're called, los insurgentes. And so it's actually, important, this connection that Zapata had with Morelos, right? Because of the fact that, again, it was also it was one of the states named after a revolutionary. Lucy Raid, oh my goodness, thank you so much. Lucy, welcome in all of the gigglers. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, streamer. Welcome, raiders. I am Shakespeare. I am a historian. And right now we're going over the history of the Mexican Revolution because today is Revolution Day in Mexico. Thank you so much for the raid, Lucy. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can have a chat soon on stream.
On the northern front, Obregón warded off an offensive by Villa near the town of Celaya. Obregón,
and I knew he had to bring back the sombrero, but I will nap in preparation to try to get new thingies. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you again for the raid. I really appreciate it. Make sure to like and subscribe if you'd like to. Yeah, you're all welcome. Make sure to get nice and cozy. So, again, with the sombrero just makes me kind of upset, a little bit upset. But the sombrero became a symbol because it was the peasantry that made it out of, the materials that they did, right? Which varied depending on where you were in the country. Usually was made out of straw, etc., right?
Skilled general, was well prepared for Villa's now famous frontal cavalry attacks and fortified his positions with barbed wire and machine.
Oh, look at that. Huh. Yes. Oh, thank you so much for shouting out Lucy. Yes, make sure to follow Lucy on Twitch as well. So, barbed wire, huh? Interesting how the technologies of oppression can be used in other contexts as well. Where barbed wire was used against Mexicans in Texas and in the Southwest, so too it was used against those who were trying to get the social reforms that a recently, well, I say recently, but a country that is so deeply imperialized by the United States. Lucy is mostly... Oh, Lucy... Yeah, that's right. Lucy is mostly on YouTube nowadays, but planning her return to Twitch. Glad to hear. So, again, this is... for one thing, is where this barbed wire has to come from, right? I mean, it almost goes without saying. Where did they get all this barbed wire from? The United States. So...
machine gun nests, tactics reminiscent of the then ongoing First World War. Obregón would then go on to defeat Villa in 2 more battles, forcing the horse thief turned revolutionary to retreat.
See, look, if every revolutionary, like the fact that they always go back to him being a horse thief, which is, but it's interesting because what that means is that shows, I mean, at least if you were to take it on it for its face value, right? Obviously, owning horses are something which wealthier people tend to have, right? So, like, one of his big issues here is the fact that he stole property, was something which is seen as property, right? Like, that's what essentially horse thief is meant to say. Arsenal of democracy, that's right.
To his home turf in northern Mexico. His army shattered, Villa blamed his predicament on the Americans, who had been...
I mean, it was the Americans' fault. I don't know what you want me to tell you, bro. It was the Americans' fault. Like, he's right. He's right. I mean, and not only that, but the Americans were conducting ethnic cleansing upon Mexicans in the United States. So, so one other thing to also keep in mind is that during the Mexican Revolution, I often call it the tale of two percentages. Right? 10% of the Mexican population during 1910 to 1920, right, had to flee, had to find refuge because of the violence of the revolution. That 10% of the population went to the United States, right? Because, again, there was a civil war essentially going on, right? The Mexican Revolution. It is estimated that about 10% of the... So we have accounted for 10%. There are 90% left, right? That another 10% were fatalities during the Mexican Revolution. So Mexico lost 2 in 10 people, right? 20% of its entire population, either as fatalities of the war, right? Or of the violence of the revolution, or mainly by the federales going after, etc. Or escaped to the United States. So 20% of the population was now either no longer with us, right? That is to say, in the land of the living, but also 10% was in the United States. And again, this was them seeking refuge from the violence of a revolution that essentially the United States helped to keep on going. So yeah, more like ours. Oh my god, Philippe. One thing I will credit with one thing though. I am glad. I'm actually interested in the fact that he does portray the different revolutionary leaders and the different accomplices, the comprador bourgeoisie members as being different races, right? Although I don't think that I don't know if he would see them as different races, because people often think Mexican is a race and it's not. But like actually showing Zapata being more indigenous, right? Yes, please make sure to join the Discord. Please do. We have community nights. We always have a Friday one, and usually have a Saturday one as well, where we watch movies, which are always free to suggest a film. And yeah, just we love to just hang out, and we have what I would like to think is a very kind and caring community that you are more than welcome.
Backing Carranza and Obregon for some time. In retaliation...
Okay, let's see here. The United States aimed to keep Mexico neutral in the Great War, which they were. Mexico has been a neutral country for quite a while. In fact, it broke its neutrality once to go to war in World War II. So, at a time when German influence was... No, it was not... The amount of German influence this is acting like Mexico had is literally beset by belied by the fact that the United States is choosing the victors of particular stages of the Mexican Revolution. Germany couldn't do that. Germany could not do that. More like nerdy and bad sleep schedule community. Well, Perhaps. Not a safe for the French when I'm in there, though. Okay. But yes. In fact, I'll even put the link here in Twitch. Yes, make sure to join the Rainbow Castle. You're all welcome.
Villa led an expedition against the U.S., attacking the border town of Columbus, New Mexico.
Okay. This, he's actually taking out of its context in a weird way, because it makes it look like he decided to, like, criminally, quote unquote, right, like, cross the frontier and war, and there was a reason why. And part of the reason why is because up into, like, during the First World War, right, but really since the turn of the century, but especially, like, once you start getting to, like, well, before 1917, because 1917 is when the Bath riots happen, right? But it's around this time that the United States decides to, do that thing where it, as it always says, capitalism breeds innovation, so to speak. Well, the United States breathed in the innovation of, using Zyklon B. It is a delousing agent, right? And it still exists. It's just called cyanosyl, right? Like now. And the United States still uses it, But anyway, point being that the United States first began to use Zyklon B around this time. And unlike the immigrants who arrived to the United States via Ellis Island or Angel Island in New York and San Francisco, respectively, the ones who crossed via the land borders, right, with Mexico, were subjected to... Hello, Finnegan's Marshall. Were subjected to... I wonder, like, I'm trying to think, like, what was the euphemism that they would use at the time? Well, essentially, they would have probably have called it, like, sterilization baths. Oh, I'm so glad to have you here. Okay, so they essentially made them take, but these baths were horrific because they're not like, oh, they would make them take a shower. No, they would actually strip people and, like, forcibly shave them, and then after being shaven, their whole body, and in fact, there's even one quote that comes out to me because of the emphasis that they put on the term hairy parts. But anyway, point being that the people were forcibly shaved, and then they had to take a bath in, the chemicals that were used changed, eventually. Like by the 60s, you have them using DDT and other such things to gas the people. But at the time, you had the usage of vinegar and kerosene. Now, I don't know about you, but if you just... Okay, first of all, just imagine taking a bath in vinegar mixed with kerosene, right? Now imagine taking a bath after you just got shaven with vinegar and kerosene. Okay? Purification baths, yes, exactly. And at the same time, in fact, they were the ones, Americans were the ones who, against Mexicans, first began to use the term gassing chamber. They're the ones that called them that. Like, you can actually look at the architectural specs and they will say, it doesn't have to be Vergassungskeller, right, as it is in German, right, which is gassing cellar. But of course, the usage of Zyklon B, which was noticed by the Germans in a scientific article in 1938 that said, hey, look, the Americans are being so capitalist and innovative over there that they've used Zyklon B for delousing purposes. Maybe we should look into that. So, in 1917, there were the Bath riots, which started when Teresita, as she's often known, affectionately, said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go through this horrific bath, right? I'm not going to... And in fact, some people even attribute this, what happened in Columbus, to the fact that at one point, and this was described by not me, but by the historical scholars that you can look at, such as looking at Kevin R. Johnson's article in the Pace Law Review, "The Forgotten Repatriation of Persons of Mexican Ancestry and Lessons for the War on Terror." A mouthful, I know, but still a good article, as well as others. And also, of course, The Decade of Betrayal, which also portrays this, where they actually, it's said to have caused a Holocaust at one point in the original, lowercase h form, right? Because once at one of the El Paso jails, and Columbus is rather close to El Paso, generally speaking, they had many people, many Mexican men, having to collectively take a kerosene, vinegar, etc. chemical bath. And someone, so it couldn't have been any of the people taking the baths, right, lit a match. And I don't think I need to continue describing what happened next, but that is the reason why it was called a Holocaust. So, giving a terrible new meaning to the phrase ethnic cleansing, yeah, I mean, why the Inquisition was awesome, actually? What? What are you powerful thing? What do you mean by that?
After a short skirmish, both Villa and the now enraged Americans claimed victory. A day after the raid, American President Woodrow Wilson dispatched General John Pershing to hunt down Pancho Villa. Despite the superiority of the American forces, Villa led Pershing on a wild goose.
Okay, I just gotta say one thing. Not my opinion, just Pax. Oh, yeah. I saw that Freda made one of these days we should probably have Freda on, actually. That'd be cool. But can I just say, like, doing this whole Wile E. Coyote and whole thing with Mexican people, it's racist. I'm just gonna say it like that. It doesn't seem right to me. I don't know why. It just, like, I'm looking at this and I'm just like, why? Just I don't know.
Chase across northern Mexico and evaded capture, eventually forcing the Americans to return home empty-handed. Despite this apparent victory, Villa was no longer the force he used to be, and soon took a back seat in the conflict, leaving his alliance with Zapata and containing himself in his home state of Chihuahua.
So, one thing I also want to mention is the fact that Chihuahua is a very interesting state of Mexico. One, it's the largest state in Mexico, but also it is known for, a lot of its ranches and et cetera, but it has a very interesting history in terms of peoples who have come from abroad, right? Like immigrants that have come to Chihuahua to form part of the local culture, right? The two groups that come to mind are the Mennonites, right? Which is why in Mexico we have, and it's actually common to see Mennonite, like usually like young men selling queso menonita, right? Like on, like at a street side stand, right? To the point where there are so many Mennonites that actually Plattdeutsch, right? The language that the Mennonites speak, which is essentially like Pennsylvania Dutch. It's Low German. Is recognized as an official language or as a protected language in Chihuahua, right? So then on the other side of the sort of area where most of the Mennonites live in Chihuahua, there's like a mountain range, and then it expands out towards New Mexico. There, they had a lot of Mormon or Latter-day Saints people who went into Mexico at that time. And essentially, Mitt Romney's dad it was born in Mexico. It was born in in these communities of Nuevas Casas Grandes, and there are it's a little bit difficult to get like into a lot of specifics, because like there's one family that's kind of like infamous, also famous, I guess, the LeBaron family. But yeah, I mean, essentially, yes. If people go to Mexico and they have this expectation of what it's going to be like, and Chihuahua is this really interesting place where you have one of Mitt Romney's like cousins or something is like in the state parliament. Like, I don't, it's just like one of those things. It's like, oh yeah, you know, like,
With his power seeming increasingly secure, Carranza drafted a new Mexican constitution in 1917, the first in the world to set out social rights such as the 8-hour workday, maternity leave, and the right to strike.
So, Mitt Romney is Mexican. Well, his dad is Mexican. Los Romney, no sabes. Ándale, aquí se va a acabar el corrido todo el 20. No, but, so, you heard just 3 things. Well, actually, I don't know if you remember, but in 2012, that actually was a thing. Like, I think Vice TV, like, back in the day, actually did a thing, like, where they went to go visit the family and sort of show how they were tough. You know, because I remember one of the LeBaron kids. Well, he's a grown man, but one of the many children. Because like this one dude, like, so the reason why the LDS church went there was because of the church split between the LDS and the FLDS, right? The fundamentalist ones. Although Mitt Romney is, well, that's what people have said, right? That's what people described it as. So. Yeah, but his dad, Jorge Romney, was born in Mexico. So yeah. So now you know. But it was like a thing. Like, I remember there were people that were saying like, oh, because his dad's Mexican, somehow that's going to appeal to Mexicans. It's like, no, that's not how that works, bro. But anyway, yeah. In fact, you can still go back to that area, and like I said, one of his cousins is in the Chihuahua State Legislature, right? And it's interesting too because he really likes to get his shoes shined a lot. At least that's like the one thing I know about him. I seen him a little, like it wasn't in person, but it was in a video. I just remember seeing him and was like, but yeah, like one of the LeBaron like dudes is like described as like, oh, you come to Mexico and you expect people to like look quote unquote Mexican, right? And he's like, but then you see this dude that's like built like a linebacker. I will never forget this. You know, and it completely shatters your mind about what Mexicans can be like. But of course, they still want to see them as, you know, because I mean they're still white. I don't know why people think like, oh, if I was born in Matamoros as opposed to Brownsville, that would literally be a racial like change, you know, like that doesn't even make sense, but whatever.
Carranza scored a further victory in 19...
Oh yeah, so yes, the Mexican Constitution came with the right to strike, maternity leave, which for the United States is still a thing that they kind of can't agree on, and other things, right? But one of the things that actually was not even mentioned is the fact that, let me see here. And I'm gonna have to one of them was education, and this actually becomes important because there is a book called Backroads Pragmatists, right, that shows how Mexico's experiments with education, right, to educate as many people as possible, particularly by founding las escuelas normales, of which Ayotzinapa, where the 43 students were disappeared, is one of those, and in fact upholds socialist principles to this day. And is also famously has Genaro Vargas? No, I'm getting it wrong now. Anyway, very famous revolutionary figure who led an insurgency against the dictatorship in Guerrero. He's Afro mestizo, and he's one of the main people that they're very honored to have as one of their alums. But when it comes to education, for example, it corresponds to the state, sort of the guidance of education. It will be imparted by this, as well as being obligatory, universal, inclusive, public, free, and secular. Right? Like, this is when you start to get that real, like, the secularization of the government, right? Because like, that's one of the things that they also don't talk about, like the role that the church played during the Mexican Revolution. Like, they were all down for, like, like one of the parties that got founded, essentially just after the PAN party. Like, they were literally like Mussolini lovers. You know what I mean? Or what did Aiden Ross call him? Benito Mazzulli. Yeah, they were Mazzulli lovers, okay? And in fact, Benito Mussolini is actually named after Benito Juarez, of all people. Like, it's just such a weird thing, but anyway. But yeah, so, you have same thing with other aspects too, like trying to see if I can find another one. Sorry, I actually have another copy of this that I've actually had since I was like a child, so this is a newer one. But still, because the only time I've ever really, all education, all of the education which the state imparts will be free, right? So that's why state universities in Mexico are free, right? For so there's that, right? I'm trying to see if I can find the part where it literally says, another thing too was the recognition of the indigenous people, which was, again, a huge step considering up until 24, right? So like not even 5 years. This would have been 7 years after this. You were still having, raids against the Apache. Oh shit, I subbed to him because he has the same name as Benito Juarez, so I assumed he's cool. He had good emotes. Are you sure he was bad? Oh my gosh. Benito Mazzulli. Oh my gosh.
1919, when he successfully assassinated Emiliano Zapata.
You call that a victory? That's horrible. What a horrible thing to say. That's just, my goodness gracious, that's just unbelievable. He scored another victory. Yeah, the revolutionary that literally wanted him to do the redistribution of land and stood up for the peasants of the country, who were the vast majority, by the way. Just
bringing an end to his rebellion in the South.
This is bad. This is a bad thing, bro. Like, why did they feel the need to continue the rebellion in the South? Why? It still plays itself out to this day in like what happened in Iguala, right? Against the Ayotzinapos, right? Like, I kid you not, when Felipe Calderón, right, the president who started the Mexican drug war, which has been going on for 17 years, so pretty much my entire life, when I was growing up in Tijuana and everything, when he finally had to give up after his 6-year term, right, and when he gave a folder of the top security priorities of the entire country, the school, right, that Anabel Hernandez writes about as being, in this book here, where the 43 students were disappeared, was listed as the number 2 highest priority security threat in the country. So, therefore, one cannot but conclude that the fact that Zapata was killed was probably a bad thing. I don't know, but it just seems like a bad thing to me.
Though small-scale fighting was still ongoing throughout Mexico, Carranza appeared to be nearing total victory. However, as Carranza was securing notable political victories and consolidating his power, he also began to alienate his closest allies.
Okay, let's see here. Oh my gosh, I knew he was going to bring up the Zimmerman telegraph. I knew it. I swear, it's like the only, like, of all the things about the Mexican Revolution that, like, the United States even cares about is this thing which never even, like, was intercepted, right, by British intelligence. So think about that, right? If the British caught it, that means that it didn't get very far. I'll put it like that, right? But Mexico was in charge, or rather the person that just, quote unquote, ended the revolution, right? Carranza was backed by the U.S. Like, it still doesn't make sense, right? But they still like to act like, ooh, there could have been a situation where Mexico would have been the aggressor, and that would have allowed us to invade it again. Pretty much is what this is trying to say. But yes, in August 1917, the United States recognized Carranza's regime as the official government of Mexico, because they also backed him too. A move directly resulting from, well, I don't know if you could say directly resulting from the Zimmerman telegraph. That's a bit much, but again, they were the people that funded this guy, so of course it did not take the Zimmerman telegram for them to be like, our guy won.
Alvaro Obregón. Obregón had been put off by many of Carranza's reforms and felt like he was being gradually pushed to the sidelines of Mexican politics. The final straw came in 1920.
Oh my gosh. Are you serious? Mexico.exe. You know what? I think that this could be, a good addition to, if not right now, because the donor goal is to help me, if people would like to, but once I finally find a place where I can be more stable and can go back to the 2 dono goals that we have, this would definitely go in there with the same one that Rudyard is in.
Carranza chose to nominate an obscure diplomat as his chosen successor instead of Obregón. This slight proved too much for Obregón, who promptly launched what proved to be the final coup of the Mexican Revolution. With the army...
I like how it's being compared to, like, a virus, but, totally normal, right, to compare, But yes, viva la revolución. In fact, the fact that it was the first social revolution of the 20th century in the whole world, and the fact that it gave rise to a constitution that was seen as so progressive that the United States was afraid that Mexico was going to go full Bolshevik, and they actually called us Bolshevik Mexico. Unfortunately, it was... there were a lot of things that still needed to be done and still need to be done.
At his back, Obregón stormed Mexico City, forcing Carranza to flee to Veracruz once again.
Wait a second, bro. Now you show Baja California as one state, but before you didn't. Also, what on earth, Jalisco? Okay. Anyway, I'll just leave the map alone. But there's another state right here called Nayarit. That should be here. Anyway. So, in Mexico, just these 2 states here, Oaxaca and Chiapas, are the only 2 that are majority indigenous. All of the rest of the states are either white majority or mestizo majority, usually mestizo majority. But the farther north you go, the whiter it gets. And then, and then Guerrero is the state where in the Costa Chica, you have the main population of Afro-Mexicans, and in La Costa Grande, you have a large also indigenous population as well. So Mexico didn't go full-blown trot and invade the US and spread communism. No. Well, no, because I mean, yeah, Mexico. I mean, there was a time when Mexico, had Trotsky living there, and you can go visit where he lived. There's like a little museum. Just don't bring blocks of ice. That they don't like that joke. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah. Wait a second. This is like including part of Belize. Like this should be like this over here. Okay, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know why he decided to like give part of northern Belize to Yucatan, but okay.
However, Obregon's former ally would never reach his destination. Somewhere along the road to Veracruz, Carranza was shot. The exact circumstances of his death are still debated today.
Again, like, Carranza has an interesting legacy because he's still seen as important because of the Constitution, right? Hello, ancestor. Hola. Mahalo. How are you doing?
Alvaro Obregon would rule Mexico from 1920 to 1924 before turning over power to a trusted ally.
So again, you sort of see where this goes. And again, like, the United States backed these people. I don't know, at some point people want to focus on their interpersonal disputes. Other times they want to look at it through like high politics and everything, but by the way, again, just to remind you, Sabra, right, is indigenous to Mexico. It is literally like the Mexica have, their own like mythology around El Nopal, right? There are people that call themselves, nopaleros. They are an invasive species that was brought over to Palestine. And the fact that, certain people like to call themselves that. I don't know. Anyway, I'm good. How are you? I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm glad I actually got to get a stream in.
Just as he wished Carranza had done. During his rule, Obregon would pass numerous reforms and provide the country with much-needed stability after years of bloodshed. Rumors spread that he was behind the assassination.
So, the Right of Workers, Federal Law, Labor Law, 1922... what that is referring to is to what essentially became Article 123, or 123, if I can even find it in time. Because again, this isn't this isn't my usual constitution that I use. Oh yeah, I'm way... Here we go. Oh gosh, so many different ones. Okay. Wait. Okay, the sixth title on work and social provisions. All persons have the right to a dignified job which is socially useful. In effect, there will be promotion, right? The government will promote the creation of jobs and the social organization of work, right? As conforms to the law, right? So that's essentially what we're talking about. In the Congress of the Union, so the Parliament of Mexico, without contravening the basis of the following, right, should expand and should try to find, should try to lay down laws, right, that about all should try to promulgate laws that will, right, recognize, right, that between the workers, the day laborers, domestic employees, artisans, and in a general sense, all jobs, like all forms of employment, one, the day, the maximum, like the workday, it will be 8 hours. So that's something they mentioned before, right? The So the workday is 8 hours. The maximum for night work is 7 hours, right? And again, whether or not this is kept, I understand. Like obviously, just like every constitution, it has a lot of nice things that are in here. And again, I've studied constitutional law, like not as a full on, like I didn't. Like I'm not about to, to join the Mexican Bar Association or anything, but just because I've always found the Constitution to be quite interesting. But anyway, because it was seen as so progressive at the time, right? To sort of put it in a historical context. So yes.
Of a retired rancher in northern Mexico by the name of Pancho Villa. Of the 4 revolutionaries of 1913, only Obregon remained. This dubious honor was not to last, however, as Obregon himself would be assassinated just a...
Why do you have to... I'm sorry, but just like the weird this, and just like his face is just like he looks like a mannequin.
few years later by a disgruntled Catholic fanatic. A violent end.
You see? You see what I mean? The violent Catholic. It's interesting because Graham Greene did write The Power and the Glory, which people kind of know the title, but like they don't know what the book is about, which it's about the Cristero War, which was a uprising of essentially the most reactionary forces of the church that were upset that the state and the church were no longer, the state essentially said about the church, like she doesn't even go here. You know what I mean? Like she can't sit with us. Okay, she gotta.
To a violent revolution. In the decade of bloodshed, more than 1 million Mexicans had lost their lives.
And 10% of the population of Mexico perished during the Mexican Revolution, this decade-long revolution. Another 10% came to the United States, right, to seek asylum, to seek refuge. And so, think about how this must have been when you try to rebuild a country that just went through this turmoil that got extended and everything else because of the United States, etc.
The immense human tragedy of the revolution also drove countless Mexicans to flee to the United States in search of safety and a better life. Political developments of the Mexican Revolution would also continue to reverberate into the modern era. After his assassination in 1928, Alvaro Obregon's allies would form a political party that would come to be known as the PRI, ruling Mexico until the year 2000.
Oh my gosh. He has inspirational music as he's talking about a dictatorship. Like, yes, one party rule was founded. Oh, how great, how wonderful. No, that's not good. Dictatorships, U.S.-backed dictatorships, not good. Generally speaking. They founded the party that would rule the country until the year 2000. We're gonna rule that a dictatorship. But no, I just the inspirational music behind it is just so funny to me. Like,
perhaps most importantly, though, Carranza's Constitution of 1917 not only served as inspiration for both Weimar Germany and the Soviet Union's own documents.
That's right. That is correct. Weimar Germany's democratic constitution and the Soviet constitution were inspired by the political Constitution of the United Mexican State that came out of the Mexican Revolution. Again, this is why this Constitution is always underrated, in my opinion, because it influenced two experiments, right? Weimar, and also, if you read the Weimar Constitution, you'll actually see how it did try to, essentially, I'll save that for another day. But again, this also inspired the Soviet Constitution. And I've always found it important to sort of think about the fact that, this is why we have to have solidarity with all of the peoples of the world, right? We can't just say like, oh, well, this is our thing and only our stuff, right? No. The fact that it did inspire, Weimar's Constitution and the Soviet Union's, right, speaks to the fact that, again, the first social revolution in the world of the 20th century is one worth remembering and one worth celebrating even outside of Mexico. So therefore, I would say, and I would ask of you to remember the Mexican Revolution and to remember that it's still not done yet. I can smell the ideology from here. Oh. Yeah.
But it continues to be used in Mexico to this day. So, with every politician sworn in, every law passed, and every vote counted...
I'm sorry, okay, look. Having the inspiration of music, fine, whatever, I think it's interesting that, the Weimar Constitution and the Soviet Constitution, got inspiration from the Mexican one, right? The one that came out of the Mexican Revolution. However, talking about how Mexico became a US-backed dictatorship, again, pretty much, but this time with elections, right? Like, they're like, oh, you know what, last time the people didn't like the fact that, we just wanted one guy to rule forever. So this time we'll have them, have their little elections, but they can only vote for one party. So, democracy. Managed democracy. So yes, the legacy of the Mexican Revolution lives on. Viva la Revolución. It still is not done. But,
The legacy of the Mexican Revolution lives on.
Indeed it does. But, again, like I said, it's still not done. There were still many other things that needed to happen for it to, yes, it did create one of the most progressive documents in the world, but, I do think that, that we also have to consider, we also have to consider the fact that, again, it was very progressive. It does mean a lot. And that's why we shouldn't allow it to be forgotten, right? In my opinion. In my personal opinion, of course. So, with that being said, I think that it's best if we were to on Twitch, to raid out. Thank you again, everybody, for joining me for this stream. I hope that people enjoyed it. Again, Viva la Revolución. Don't forget the first social revolution of the 20th century. Don't let its legacy be forgotten. And never let the revolutionary optimism die out. So with that, I say, oh, thank you all for joining me. Thank you. Okay, everybody on Twitch. Oh no. I can't. Give me one quick second. I guess we can't raid that person. Okay, if everyone could please get in the machine while we head on out. Make sure to tell Cinemarxism hello for me. Thank you again for joining me, and I will see you all later.